Okay, so this video is going to cover the topic of perfect price discrimination. This is a limiting type of a limiting case. We call it perfect price discrimination because you imagine, suppose that the seller is able to extract the full willingness to pay from each consumer for each unit of the good that they sell. Okay, so imagine like you've got the most perfect auctioneer or bargainer in the world, and people come up to buy cars from them, and they're selling cars, and this person is able to just figure out by talking to whatever their skill is, they're able to figure out exactly how much each customer would be willing to pay for the car. And then you manage to charge them that price. And again, what we said in the previous video about preventing resale, you also manage to do that as well. Now, this isn't likely to happen because the amount of information that the seller would need to have is just amazing to be able to tell for each consumer exactly how much they'd be willing to pay. Or if you're also buying multiple units of it, this would also imagine that you're able to figure out how much somebody would be willing to pay for, like, say, the first car they're going to buy, and then how much they'd be willing to pay to buy a second one, and so forth, and charge them just the right price to extract the full consumer surplus in that case as well. So this is, in one sense, kind of implausible. Informationally, just how you would ever think you'd be able to get enough information for a seller to be able to do this is pretty hard. But we talk about because it allows us to see what happens to marginal revenue in this case. So we're going to start here with, I'm going to do a little differently. I'm going to have a price, a demand schedule in here. And now what we're going to think, now remember, normally we would think if you're selling at one price, you'd take, like, say, you could sell 3 units for $20. And so then the revenue would be $60. And I guess I'm going to want to have in here total revenue as well. And so what we'll do is, because we're going to have this case, we're going to assume that somehow the seller is able to extract a full consumer surplus. So they're able to charge a price that's just completely equal to this willingness to pay, which is, if you remember, what we get off of the demand curve. So in this case then, the first customer comes up and you're able to determine they'd be willing to pay $30 for it, and you manage to charge it from them. So then you buy, you're able to get $30 in revenue because you figure out they're willing to pay $30 and get them to pay the $30. And then the marginal revenue would be $30 as well. Now you get to the second unit. Now, normally, as we talked about before, like, say, when we were thinking about the monopolist marginal revenue curve, we say, well, to sell the second unit, you have to lower the price from 30 to 25, and you have to sell both units for $25. So the revenue would be 50. But it's not going to be 50 in this case because you get to sell the first unit for $30 and then you sell the second unit for $25 because you've got this amazing bargainer who's able to figure out exactly how much the second customer is willing to pay is $25, and then you manage to charge them that. And so then your total revenue wouldn't be 50, it would be 55. It would be the 30 plus 25. And then when you get to sell a third unit, again, we're continuing with the story we're telling here. You're able to extract a full consumer surplus. The third customer is willing to pay $20. So you charge them $20. You charge 30 and 25 to the first two, and now the total revenue is going to be 75, not 60, because we would have said like 3 times 20 is 60. But it's not that, it's 75. And then you get down here, the fourth unit, you manage to sell that for $15, and that means that the total revenue is now 90. All right, so then let's look and see what happens to marginal revenue each time. Well, the marginal revenue of the first unit you sold was 30. The marginal revenue of the second unit you sold is 25. 50 minus 30, or you think of the 25 that you can see that you would sell it for, and then the marginal revenue of the third unit is 20, and the marginal revenue of the fourth unit is 15. Marginal revenue is the same as what we had in the price. So that would tell us the marginal revenue curve, if we went to graph, if we took these two columns and went to graph it, well, it's the same two columns as we have here, and that gave us the demand curve. So that tells us down here that our market demand curve is the marginal revenue curve. And this is then why we can sort of see, like, oh, this is why it's worth talking about perfect price discrimination, because we can relatively easily, with a graph now, show what this means. And so we can contrast then the case of perfect price discrimination for a monopolist from a monopolist selling with a single price, because then you would draw in the monopolist's marginal revenue curve that would be downward sloping. And so we can contrast this then in the case of perfect price discrimination, and we can do so relatively easily, because we can have the one price marginal revenue curve here, and then the perfect price discrimination marginal revenue curve here, which happens to be the demand curve. So graphically and analytically, this ends up being something we can handle quite easily, and that makes it, that's why we actually go through the bother of thinking about what perfect price discrimination would be, because again, it allows us to see exactly what the result would be. Again, this is really, really unrealistic. I mean, the ability to somehow discern for each and every customer exactly how much they'd be willing to pay is quite unrealistic. Or another way to think about it is the cost that would be involved in trying to debate or discuss or bargain with somebody long enough to figure out exactly how much they'd be willing to pay and extract that full consumer surplus. Well, I mean, it would end up more than offsetting that whatever extra revenue you would get. But this is nice, and it does allow us to see this. And then we can see that for the monopolist, what's causing, in effect, the monopolist to supply too little or less than the competitive amount is the fact that the only way the monopolist selling for a single price can sell that third unit is they have to lower the price. And that means they lose the revenue on the previous units they sold. With perfect price discrimination, you don't do this. You can sell to an extra customer for exactly what they're willing to pay, and you don't have to lower the price for the units you were previously selling. And so it was the lowering the price for the units you were previously selling that caused the marginal revenue to deviate from the demand curve for the monopolist in Chapter 10. Perfect price discrimination, we no longer have that. So that's why it's like perfect price discrimination is in effect, again, giving us some more insight as to exactly what was going on in the monopoly case with a single price and why it is we had this deviation of marginal revenue from demand before. So once we have this, then we can go on to say show the comparison between a price discriminating monopolist and a monopolist selling for a single price.